I will, excuse me, Alex, I will go ahead and turn the meeting over to you as we do before all of our WebEx meetings. And then I will follow after that once we get the motion.
Okay, yeah, this is Alex Dickerson from Metro Legal. And just a reminder to everybody today, regardless of whether you're a board member or a participant of any kind, if you participate in the call verbally today, you need to identify yourself by name. That's a requirement of the governor's executive order permitting electronic meetings. But the motion you're looking for is that the proposed agenda constitutes essential business of this body, and that meeting electronically is necessary for the health, safety, and well-being of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak.
Thank you, Alex. Can I get a motion for the approval of the statement that Alex has made for the WebEx meeting? And could you just state your name before the motion as well?
Scott, I approve.
Brenda, I second.
And all in favor, that's aye. Priscilla?
Aye, Brenda.
Aye, Scott.
Thank you. And as far as with the roll call, we'll go ahead and do that as well. I, Priscilla Norman, I'm here. And just could each board member do the same, please?
I, Brenda Buckham, I'm here.
Aye, Scott Moskovitz, I'm here.
Thank you very much. And we will move forward with the WebEx meeting. If you would like to join the meeting via phone, please call 1-415-655-0002. When prompted for the meeting, enter access code and enter 187-506-6816, followed by the pound. And then when prompted, please indicate you are an attendee. And if you would like to have a public comment, please use the comment line, which is 629-255-1963. As far as announcements, as information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Farmers Market Board today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the board's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact your own independent legal counsel. Public comments, individuals requesting to address the board will be limited to 3 minutes unless granted more time by the board chair. Each person authorized to speak is to state his or her name, their address, and the organization they represent, if any. And if the speaker reads from prepared text, please provide a copy to the board staff. Do we have any public comments at this time? Okay, Charles, do you see anything on your end?
We do not.
Okay, great. I'll move forward. I would like to get a motion for the approval of the March 18th, 2021 regular meeting minutes.
I, Brenda.
This is Scott. So, motion for approval.
Great.
Brenda Buckham, second.
Great. All in favor? Aye. Priscilla Norman.
Aye,
Aye,
Brenda
Scott
Buckham.
Moskovitz.
Okay.
Aye, Brenda. We're all here.
All right, great. And we will move forward as far as with the appointment of the interim director. As the board knows at this time, that's Charles Kaiser. He is stepping in as the interim director for Tasha Kennard. We thank you, Charles, for stepping up to be our interim director. I really appreciate it. I know we've had several conversations and had a chance to meet and discuss a few things over the weekend. So if you have anything you would like to say or add at this time, I will go ahead and turn that over to you.
Yes. First, I want to thank the board for the opportunity of stepping in as the interim director. Again, I've been here 6 years, so I've got to see a lot of the major changes that has occurred at the market, and very excited that I was, part of that, and even more excited to be part of continuing that, making the market bigger and better. It has so much more potential, and I'm excited about pushing forward with that. So thank you.
All right, great. And moving forward, I have on here for the executive director search.
Madam Chair, this is
Yes.
Alex Dickerson with legal.
Yes.
We're requesting that you all have a vote to name Mr. Kaiser as interim director, please.
Yes, yes, yes. May I get a motion to have Charles Kaiser as our interim director?
Brenda Budka, I so move. We're glad
Tom
to have.
Moskowitz, I second.
And okay, all in favor, that will be Priscilla Norman. Aye, yes, for the appointment.
Brenda Budka, aye.
Scott Moskowitz, aye.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you,
And
Charles.
with the executive director search, Scott is going to be our point of contact, working with any applicants that come in, as well as with the administration. So at this time, Scott, I would like to turn it over to you, and thank you so much for being willing to do this for us.
I hope you're thanking me later too. Just kidding. You know, at this juncture, I think that there are big shoes to fill with Tasha leaving, and you know, it's going to be a matter of requesting everybody to take a hard look at the job description, and especially, you know, I think even you know, management and helping us really make sure that we're looking at any possibilities of any talents or capabilities that we look, you know, going to the future. One of the things that I'm hopeful for, being new to the board and not really have been involved, is to really have a understanding and a working relationship with the board and the operations management of kind of where we are today and where do we see ourselves going. I know we have a business plan, I know we have a forecast, but we also have had COVID and we're coming out of it, and we've got, you know, new opportunities and, you know, new challenges. So I'm hoping everyone will weigh in in these board meetings and any other time to say, you know, what is the best possible outcome for the market, for our city, for our community, and for our vendors and for our staff. So, you know, I'm looking at it from 1,000 feet down and trying to just take a hard look. And I really, really need everyone. And I would ask legal how to kind of go about it. I mean, is there a possibility of, you know, how we, you know, do it the correct way and people weigh in on any other talents and any other, you know, thoughts? I know I have a lot of different thoughts about certain experiences that, you know, maybe we haven't seen before, but I want to make sure we look at all that. And I want to make sure that we're all giving our input, because especially the staff, they know what they're up against every day. So, you know, that's the way I'm going about it, is an open book, and make sure that, you know, we're really looking. I think there's a lot of possibilities out there, and we need to make sure that we're advising HR of ways to go look about it. And I'd be happy, if appropriate, to take any questions from the board and or the management in anything they want to ask me. I want to say this, so it's no secret. I feel very, very strongly that this may be one of the greatest location opportunities, communities, meaning with all the people that live in the area, that, you know, this is a tremendous tremendous opportunity for us to make this really the very, very best it can be. And look how this team has shined through just a dark, dark time. Look what they've done together. Look what Tasha accomplished. So now, as we come out of it, you know, you look at this location. I mean, and the clientele. I think there's just tremendous opportunity, and we have to have the leader that can take us there.
Madam Chair, if I could, this is Alex Dickerson of Legal. Could I address a couple of those questions?
Yes, please, Alex.
Okay, just how, because of the Open Meetings Act, and that's something we'll go into a little bit today during the training, but there's kind of limited options for how the board can communicate with each other about the search. Not to say it can't be done, but I just want to make sure everybody understands how you would do it. A couple things that HR usually recommends, and I would reiterate those, is if any particular board members have things that they're looking for in, you know, traits or things that they want to be part of the job description, they can always communicate those directly to Charles, and Charles can then communicate them to the board member on the kind of handling HR. Alternatively, if you want to set an agenda item for next month to discuss specifics about what you want to do with the job description or anything else, that could always be discussed in an open meeting. Otherwise, your option would be to call a special meeting about it, which you may or may not want to do. But you got to, it will have to be, any discussions about it would have to take place during an open meeting or be communicated through Charles. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex.
Good information, and I think that's great.
Staff, did anyone have anything they wanted to add at this time to Scott's comments?
No, we do not.
Okay, great. And thank you again, Scott. I really appreciate you doing that for us and taking the lead on this search for us. It is greatly appreciated. And I agree with everything that you said. I think this team has done extraordinary in difficult times. And I think we have a long way to go, but with the proper team, we can get there. And I really do appreciate that from you. Thank you. We will move forward with the financial overview, the payment plans, and any fee waivers. Would that be you, Maria?
Oh, yes, I'm going to turn it over to Maria.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to start going over our March revenue. So I always report on last month in the following month's board meeting. The farm sheds brought in about $13,000 in March, and the market house, we collected about $65,000 in March for a total of $78,000 in revenue for that month. We've collected $1,085,000 year to date, and I'm currently projecting revenue of $1,325,000 for FY21. As you can see, this is the March financial report, so we do have 3 more months to be allocated toward FY21 revenue. We currently have about $18,000 in past due market house rent that I'll be discussing after the end of this report. Our operating expenses for that same period were $122,000. I'm rounding all these numbers and can answer any specific questions about numbers if you guys would like. Our expenses year to date are $1,153,000. So as you can see, we have hit a point in our budget where our expenses are now exceeding our revenue. So I have started to discuss a transfer with finance, and I'm working on determining the amount of the transfer at the time. As far as emergency response funds, we are not currently using a lot of those funds at this time. We just don't have a lot to code to COVID-19 at this point, and our tornado project has been wrapped up for a few months. As far as our fund balances, we have been utilizing our FY17 capital project fund for construction toward our Grow Local Kitchen project. So we spent about $37,000 of that fund in March, and we have a current balance of $89,000. The majority of that fund will be used for that Grow Local Kitchen build out that we are in the middle of. The HVAC fund has not been touched. There's still about $42,000 in that fund. And then our capital fund, which supplements our operating budget, currently has $701,000 in it. That is the fund I will be requesting a transfer from. And right now I'm expecting to request a transfer of $200,000 to $300,000.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions about the March financial report?
Maria, can you just remind us of the history of transfers? This is a usual thing, is it not correct, that we, about this time, our expenses outfit our revenue and we get funding from elsewhere? Is that?
Yeah, so the market has not been, I guess, profitable for several years now. That fund was developed due to land that Tasha could have worded this better. She's explained it to me many times. That fund was created as a result of the Tennessee State Museum project for land that was transferred over to the museum. So we've been using that $3 million over the last few years at varying levels. Last year, we were only supposed to use $500,000 that was budgeted, but we used $1 million due to the gap in revenue. This year, we were budgeted to use, I believe we're budgeted to use $325,000. I do expect that we could use more than that, depending on how our expenses end for the year. But we have been extremely tight on expenses. We also have, different areas that are not operating right now. So our expenses are definitely low. I don't expect that next year in the same way as we open both Grow Local Kitchen locations, and many of our restaurants will also move to extended hours. Many of them have been operating at limited hours. So we have seen that have an impact on our utilities and some other areas.
So let me just, this is Brenda Butka. Can I just ask, so in the future, we have this fund that'll last us another year or so? And our expenses are going to.
I'm sorry. I did discuss this in the last meeting. We did request $500,000 for next fiscal year. That was part of our request in our budget. We're asking for a subsidy of $500,000 as we were originally projecting to use the majority of that fund balance this fiscal year. We have not had to request that in several years.
Okay, thanks.
So this is Scott. Could I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
In the last several years, you haven't had to request that, but yet the market has had a negative, has lost money. So how have you shored up the finances without asking Metro for money?
We've had that capital fund of $3 million. It's Fund 40460, and that has been used in various amounts over the last several years. So that's a fund that's designated as our money already. And so we have not had to go to council to request funds from the city.
And going backwards for a minute, that $3 million was from the money that came in of losing the property where the Tennessee State Museum went.
Yes, it was negotiated as like the loss of those two sheds that were on the opposite side of the market, I believe.
So do you have any recollection of the last time the market broke even?
I don't think the market has ever broke even, to my knowledge.
And to mine either.
I think under Bredesen, it got real close.
Okay.
And so that's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at the year to date and we do just a napkin evaluation, just what I like to call the hand grenade approach, let's just get close. Without subsidies, and you just look at operationally, what would you say the year end 3 months ago, what would you say the loss will have been during this season with COVID and everything else? Operational. I'm talking about you've got so much revenue coming in, you've got expenses that are fixed and some that are moving. But if you weren't capable or have the ability to fund out of different accounts, what would your loss be? Your best guess?
I guess, can you clarify your question? Are you saying if everything was fully operational?
No. I'm saying as you see it, because you've got your finger, you and Charles have your finger on the pulse. When I look at the, FY21 projected revenue, and then I look at the expenses of the FY21 budget, so you've got total operating expenses of $2,052,000. You've got revenue of 1.325. Is that about right? I'm looking at your spreadsheet. So would it be safe to say that in this year end, without any other things that are moving parts finance, you'd say that the market, based on an operating budget, lose about $700,000?
Yes. I mean, I am projecting our expenses to be a lot lower. I mean, a salary alone, we're going to save over $150,000 just due to the hiring freeze and the lean team we've been working with. There's obviously, you can see other savings that we will have due to the limited operations. But yes, I do think that if we were fully operational and running all departments, our expenses would come close. I mean, they came, I think this is going to be a poll, but I think in FY20, they were around 1.9. So they were right up there.
Okay. So what I would request and think would be good for the board to see would be, as we move forward, that we have something. Again, I'm not looking for a lot of work to be put on this, but this is, in the next budget, our projection of income is X and our projection of expenses is Y. And we look at that number, and we, as a board and as a management team, we're able to look at that number and say, okay, operating every day, if we didn't have funds, if we didn't have grants, if we didn't have a bank line of credit, if we didn't have any other opportunity, we'd be short this amount of money. This way, I think the board can focus on, okay, how do we support the team in starting to chip away at that from an operational standpoint? The way I would run my business is, how do I fill the gap on these losses, and what works within our mission statement? So, I mean, if you took a look at that, while we're talking about it, it may come up in new business, but I also want to say to the board, I think it's really important that we're making sure that you're getting all the support you need in putting these budgets together. And, I would assume Tasha had been very, very involved, and Charles to a degree as well, but now you're down one team member. So I want to make sure that, we do everything in our power to support you on having any kind of professional support you need, whether it's out of Metro budget or whomever. Whatever's kosher, I just want to make sure you get all the support you need, because you're doing a phenomenal job. All of you are. But, I don't know that, I would assume there's some possible questions and thought processes you have on, how to make sure that you have what's got to go before the council. So I want to make sure we do that for you. That's all I have to add to
I
that.
appreciate that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, just on my initial thoughts on that, I can definitely put together a projection of revenue. I have put together projections for FY21 already,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm happy to share those with you further. And I think I discussed them a little bit when I talked about the budget, when I talked about what we submitted for FY22. Obviously, there's a lot of things to discuss and a lot of expenses that we've worked to try to get lower. And obviously bigger revenue changes will require, they will require extreme changes to, our leasing rate card, which is why we have started that discussion with the board.
Sure.
It'll require investment. And I think if we're looking at it and we can look out and say, okay, if we're making these investments and we're running up a deficit, but we see a return on that investment in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years, then we can monitor it. For me, I'm just about looking at what are, my whole life has been based on what are the sales, what are the cost of goods, what are my fixed expenses, what are my variable expenses, and what is that bottom line? And do I get to eat? So, it's very simple. And I think we're not doing our job and supporting you guys and doing what needs to be done for the city if we're not able to look at square in the eye and say, this is what we're making, this is what we're losing, and this is how we're going to get there. I have an ultimate goal that with everything else we want to do, I really want to see this be a break-even situation, which to me would make it profitable. If we can break even on this project, that would be unbelievable for the city. I'm sure the city finances would be very happy about that, but it would be a success story. I think that's really would be a success story for our management and for our vendors. That would be great. That's what I'm shooting for.
Yes, definitely, Scott. And I think too, part of that was with the rate increases gradually over the number of years. That was what we were, kind of hoping for. Of course, COVID did kind of put a dent in a lot of those last year and part of this year, but that is something that we have to be focused on. Even at minimum is breaking even, because the capital fund it's very low, and that's something that we do have to be focused on. I agree with that. Maria, you needed to follow up with that as far as with the payment plans too.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into some of those, the past due accounts, and discuss those. As were you guys able to review the information that I provided on the past due accounts?
Yes, I did see that. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, at this point, the payment plan that was passed in December is no longer valid, and I definitely need direction on how to move forward with past due vendors. One specifically, right now we really only have one past due vendor in the market house, and there is currently not a payment plan that has been passed by the board to offer them at this time. I definitely need direction on how to move forward, as I feel like I personally, I feel like the market has done all we can do to assist that vendor during this time. So I would like to hear what your thoughts are on next step for that vendor at this time.
I know with the plan that we had put in place back in December, for anyone, just the regular past due payment plan, and none of that has been met. How has the communication been with that particular vendor?
I would say the communication over the past year has been rather minimal. We've definitely had to reach out for communication. There has been more communication in the past 2 months, and they have presented a payment plan that they believe they can achieve, and that would be that $2,000 a week until they receive that PPP funding. That PPP funding has taken longer than they originally communicated. There's obviously definitely other funding that may come down the pipeline, just based on the most recent stimulus plan that was passed, and the emphasis it has on restaurants. I just am not sure. I mean, it's been a large amount of past due balance for several months now, and they are the only market house merchant in that position. So I just would, I mean, I think it's, at this point, I don't feel comfortable making decisions on their status as a vendor.
Okay. Okay.
Anybody? Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
This is Brenda. I'm just, so what I see is that they're not making gigantic headway on their past due, but they're paying and not sort of aren't accruing big new past due balances. You know, I think everyone, our temptation is to cut them off, but honestly, they're making payments. They're not getting worse off, even though they're not. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And if the PPP is a reasonable expectation, and of course we have some at least reasonable expectations that business is going to pick up here, I guess my thought would be to once again negotiate a payment plan. But
So,
go ahead.
Just because I don't have that financial information in front of me, just at my fingertips. So if we look at what they owe, which is, Maria, how much do they owe in past due arrears? How much is that ballpark?
It's about $14,600.
All right, so let's call it $15,000 they owe. Are they paying their current rent now other than that?
I would say that March was the first month that they have complete. Well, it's kind of complicated. I mean, they're definitely, the payments have varied over the last year. March was, they did provide an update in March that they felt they could pay $2,000 at that time per week. So that was the first month that they were really able to make a gain toward their past due and also complete their rent. There were several months they weren't able to complete their rent payment.
Okay. And they bought the business from someone else, so you know that's money out of their pocket that they did. I agree with Brenda. I mean, it seems to me that management should sit down with them and say, here, you have to pay this money, and we need you to at least give us an update on the communication from PPP. That's what you're telling us is going to get the past due paid. Okay, let's have an agreement that I don't have to chase you down, that you come to me and say, here's the correspondence that's happening with PPP, even if you're not getting it. But you know, I think we have to be strong and say, you know, as it relates to every month going forward, especially during the season, you need to be on time and you need to pay your rent. I don't think we have to throw that baby out with the bathwater just yet. But I will tell you my observation. I was in the market 5 times last week. I go slow times, I go busy times, I go, you know, what's happening, I go at close, I go in the morning, I'm checking it all out. And, you know, I want to make sure that we're looking at it from a perspective that, you know, they're keepers, that, you know, they're going to do what it takes have great product and be a great asset to the market. And that gives us the ability to really work with them and get them over the hump. I wouldn't throw them out for $15,000, but, you know, I don't think we can let that accumulate any larger. That would be my position. So, you know, I think having, you know, even if it's the board has said, you know, you need to be on time going forward. You cannot move into any more debt with us, and you need to give us some kind of understanding of how we're going to get this paid off. Personally, looking at their business, which I know a little bit about, you know, I think it's very, very challenging for them to pay another, you know, $2,000 a week or I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a mom and pop shop, and, you know, they're today's receipts and today's cost of goods, you know, they're pairing that off, and then they're paying themselves, and they have to. So, I mean, I get that. But I think our strength needs to be pay going forward, May 1, hopefully they paid in April, May 1, every month, you need to pay us. That would be my thought on it.
Thank you, Scott. I mean, while I understand that, I definitely need a hard date at this point. We've provided 3 payment plans. Not one of those payments had been followed. So I do feel like I need a hard date at this time. I understand this is for me feeling comfortable in my position at this point. I don't feel comfortable with this amount, especially entering the close of the fiscal year. So I definitely would like a date that you guys feel like we should come back to this, because I mean, we have provided several plans. We have gotten updates from them, and then the timeline passes. I mean, we have gotten an update on the PPP that was supposed to be the end of March. It's now the 20th of April. And while I understand that those things take some time, I'm going to need a date to communicate to them that you guys feel comfortable with. I mean, the end of June is the end of the fiscal year, which I find to be an important landmark to get this past due resolved. And I don't think we can wait till the end of June to make action on this. I mean, this affected last fiscal year's finances. So I mean, I'd love to hear a date. I don't know if this requires a motion. This is the only vendor in that situation. We've talked generally about about all vendors the last couple times. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how to get the point across at this point.
Okay. So Alex, on that, would we need to have a motion as far as us just selecting a date, since we have had other payment plans with this vendor that have not been met at all?
I mean, if ultimately the board can decide to do whatever it wants to do, I understand the position of staff that they would like a date certain, but the board is free to make any decision or not make any decision it chooses to. But yes, if you want to direct staff to do something, I would request that be done by motion.
Okay.
Let me ask this question. Okay, if we give a date, what's the remedy? Okay, they don't pay us by May 31, close of business, they don't pay. Then what are we going to do?
I agree. I mean, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I mean, this is a decision we've talked about now 3 times in the past year. So, I mean, I agree. I don't know what that point is. What is the dollar amount? What is the dollar amount that you as a board feel comfortable carrying? They are on the line and would like to provide comment. Would you guys like to hear from them at this point?
Yeah. Yes, please. At this time, yes.
Okay. Okay, Daniel Kent could be on the line and available for comment.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm Daniel, and Jess is right here. I mean, we were operating the whole business with no pay for ourselves or anything, and I know everything's been really, really messed up, but we are almost there. Like, all we are doing is waiting for this PPP loan. It'll all go to you to pay the payment, and then after that, we'll be able to make, as far as business goes now, we will be able to make our rent, and going forward, everything should be good.
So
And
Daniel,
I know that we haven't communicated really good, I guess, but I mean, we're doing everything we can to make it right with you, for sure.
So Daniel, I have a question. With the PPP, with stating that it would be available to you in March, and we're in April, have you had any updates as far as when you would receive that?
Hey, this is Jess.
Yes, hi Jess.
Hi, I just wanted to tell you guys that in terms of our update, thank you first of all for helping us with the scholarship for the business incubation center.
Mm-hmm.
That's been very helpful, and we're working with Eric Ruffin right now to file the PPP, and we've already requested everything, but we're in a unique position of buying the business in November of 2019, which obviously the perfect storm happened right after we bought it. And there's also a very strange crack that we fell into as far as our finances and owning the business for such a short time before this crisis happened. So the period of time that's happened for the processing of the PPP2 has just required a little bit more submission of information and just proof of business ownership in and of itself than for the PPP1. I don't understand why, but the last documents that they require will be submitted today, and then we should hear something back in terms of a timeline very soon.
Okay,
What
so you hadn't filed everything as stated, correct? Previously.
Oh, we filed everything, and then they requested more. Like, in terms of like your standard business, we filed everything they required, but then they asked for more information down to our social security cards.
Mm-hmm.
They just asked for more than we expected. I've been speaking to our business account manager at SunTrust Bank, and SunTrust Bank are the people that are filing the request for us. So it's on the brink of being solved. And regardless of that money, there's also the business revitalization fund that should be coming online soon. And we have Eric Ruffin also working on that for us.
Stella, can I speak? This is Angela. I was able to jump.
Yes. Hello, Angela. Thank you.
I want to speak for, well, not speak for B and C, but I can vouch for Daniel and Jess. The bank has come back and asked for additional documentation, and and to his point, it stems from them being in a perfect storm with behind the business of November, of 2019. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Jess.
That's correct.
They've
and also,
submitted
we've been working here since 2008, but we decided to buy it on the fortuitous day of November 7th, 2019.
Yes, and so they have definitely filed all the paperwork with the with the bank, and they're just in a unique position that they're asking for additional documentation. But from my from my understanding, we're speaking with Eric, and Eric is the conduit for 90% of our clients getting the PPP. That they're pretty sure that they're gonna get the funding, because I think they even just asked y'all for your social security card, and they shouldn't have to ask for that. So it's just like little things that they're
that they're requesting.
Yes, and there's also a confusion in terms of we are JD Pitmasters as far as our LLC name is, but our business is called B&C Market Barbecue, and the prior owners are called Bacon and Caviar. So there's a confusion in terms of who we are with the bank, even though we bank with them.
Okay, so Angela, since you've been working with them and discussing this with Eric, does he have like a time frame of when that could possibly be received? Hello?
I'm not sure if Angela heard your question, but I would say that today I have to submit my passport. I just have to scan it and send it to them. And then the processing should happen. And originally, whenever I was speaking with Eric, it sounded like we get the information in and we'll have funding within the week.
Okay. Scott or Brenda, do you have any other questions or anything you would like to add as far as before we make the decision on how to proceed?
Are you comfortable giving us a range of what this PPP looks like, the amount?
Right now, it looks like we'll be getting $16,000.
Okay, good.
And we're planning on applying all of that to our past due rent.
Here's my here's my suggestion to the board. I think the two of you need to make sure that you are conversing with Maria or whomever, Charles, or whichever the management says this is who they want you conversing with. But I mean, I'll let management decide how often they want to hear from you relative to this. But okay. I would say that management wants to hear from you, you know, on a set timeline of how things are going. Because if the PPP didn't come through, then they've got to address it. We've got to address it and say what's next. But I think right now we're right in the possibility that you'll get the money. You've committed to pay off your past due with it. Great. I think you heard management and finance say they want to get this done by end of fiscal year. So I think it's incumbent upon you that you're communicating with them. You can't communicate too much, I would assume.
Okay.
One last question. How is business in general now? Is it improving? Are you taking in enough revenue? If you didn't have this hanging over your head to where you're getting somewhat back to normal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're probably recovered. I would say we were down to 25% of business this time last year. In fact, probably closed. And right now we're averaging at the minimum 7,000 a week. And
Great.
it's quite an increase. We did not pay ourselves for the middle of last year, and then we stopped paying ourselves for the last quarter of last year. After the last quarter, and we just now paid ourselves a couple weeks ago, and we don't have money in savings.
I understand. And I don't think anybody in management or this board wants you not to be earning a living. So
right. Well, thank goodness I'm sorry, continue.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say we did at least, I hate to say get lucky with unemployment, but that carried us for a few months, and the care and love of our family carried us through. But just to be able to actually pay bills without having to look in our wallet was a great change.
Great. Well, that's good news. Maria, the board, I mean, I'd like to know, do we want to put a deadline on this? Do we want to say this will be addressed and hopefully resolved by and have a motion? Is that something? How do we help the vendor, and how do we help management?
Madam Chair, if I could address the board real quick.
Yes, Alex, please.
Okay, after this conversation started, I went back and reviewed the agenda, and I don't believe it's been properly noticed sufficient for you all to conduct a vote today on this topic. You can certainly put it on the agenda for next meeting, and then you can vote on it then. But at this point, I don't think the public was informed that this would be brought up as something that you're voting on. So I recommend not voting on this issue. But you can certainly still give guidance to the staff and to the applicant informally if you'd like to, but I would recommend not voting. Okay,
thank you, Alex. Thank you.
This is Brenda, and I think I just want to emphasize that we all are better off if the barbecue folks are doing well and are there. So we're all working towards that. It sounds like Maria maybe needs to let us know, but I would say a check-in at least once a week with how things are going with our. Oh, we can make that recommendation. It doesn't have to be I just want our pit masters to really have the clear idea of what they need to do to reassure everyone on our end. Things are moving ahead.
Yes, and just to interject on that, it is very easy to be lost in our day-to-day.
Oh, trust me, I know. Thank you.
Especially since we're the two owners and we're the only people that work here. So
yeah,
it's. Since March, I have been seeing Maria once a week.
Okay. I think a text or a quick phone call or email or whatever I think will suffice.
So Jess, what is the slowest day of the week or the better day for you to communicate consistently with Maria?
As of late, I've been running up on Wednesdays and dropping off a check and speaking with her for a few minutes since March. And in terms of dropping an email, that could be any time because I usually do that when I'm not at work.
Well, can we get you to tell us a day that you're consistent in writing? Just give an update so she'll have the exact facts to pass on to the board. So we'll have.
I could follow up each day that we pay on Wednesday.
Okay. That's what I recommended. We just have consistent communication in writing once a week.
Absolutely.
On Wednesday.
I can send an email every Wednesday after I give her the check.
Okay, and just give them a status update of where the PP is, what's the holdup, and if you apply for any other funding.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would also like to take a moment just to thank the entire board for your consideration and appreciation for us as an entity in the farmers market.
Thank you. And Maria, we will go ahead to notate so we can put it on the agenda for next month regarding the payment. I think definitely prior to, if at all possible, no later than the 1st of June. That is just my suggestion. We could talk about that as well.
Okay. Yeah,
and then
I appreciate your comments. This is a new territory for me as far as navigating what the board is comfortable carrying, and that's why I brought it to your attention and wanted to discuss it. It's definitely not my decision. I don't think it's my decision to carry that amount over without discussing it with you. So that's why I brought it up. And hopefully it will be resolved by next board meeting. And if not, I will include that on the agenda.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I'm definitely, I obviously want to see them stay as well. I'm just trying to make the best decision for our organization. So I appreciate all your input.
And we appreciate you, Maria.
Thank you, Jess. Moving on to fee waivers, there are no fee waivers to report at this time. if there's any other comments about the finances, that I'm wrapped up with my report.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions at this time? Okay, and since, go ahead. Yes, Scott.
I was just going to say we do not, and thank you, and we will carry on with making delicious barbecue.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Y'all have a
Okay,
wonderful
this
rest
is Charles, and we do have a one or two call-in participants, so we're trying to get those. We're trying to get those logged in.
Okay, are they in the comment line, or are they wanting to speak?
Comment line.
Okay, we'll give it just a few minutes to.
Hello?
Okay, they're on.
Hello?
Yes, please state your name and who you're with.
Okay, this is Anna Webb. I'm the owner of Heart of Nashville, which is one of only 2 non-food or beverage businesses in the Market House. And my question is this. I continue to have the constant request for other stores like mine inside the Market House. And we do have a vacant space that Batch used to occupy. I think it's because I have a space you can walk into. I have a lot of people walk in and tell me things, ask me things. So I know that there are no less than 4 people who are non-food merchants who have expressed interest in occupying that space. I believe one would have taken the entire space, and that did not happen. 2 or 3 others would like to be in there, but it's just too much space. They would like to see that space split in 2, and then you could have tenants in there very quickly. And I'm wondering why this is not happening. Are there tenants on the line who are ready to sign to take over that space that we're unaware of? I'm just feeling like the market would benefit greatly from having more retailers in there, and local retailers, of course. I know that 2 of these people, 3, would be doing more or less artisan demonstration in there, which I think would be fabulous. I'd make my artwork in there. I think people are just really hungry for this type of business inside our market, and yet we, for 10 months or so now, have had just $5,000 worth of empty retail space there. And I'm not really grasping why. I want to know that we're marching towards some kind of resolution on that space. That's my question.
Could you, I didn't hear you when you spoke of the space. Which particular space were you speaking of?
It's the one right in the center that Batch used to occupy.
Okay. And do you know who these people are? Have they reached out to the staff as far as wanting to lease a space from us?
That is my understanding, and I always encourage them to email Charles.
Okay.
And so just grab people that walk by and say something. I don't think there's an organized effort going on, but I know that we have current artisan tenants outside who would like to be in that space. And it's just a matter of $5,000 is too much, but they could swing half of it and would happily occupy. If we could quickly have 2 artisan tenants in that space if we were allowing it to become half of the current amount of space for 2 different tenants. And it happens to be what our shoppers are asking for as well. It's a sweet gig for me to just be the only sort of retailer in there. I don't love that. I think our market would benefit to have more like me in there. I know that because that's what they asked for. So that's my question. Like, where
Okay.
filling that space.
Charles, have you had anyone reach out to you regarding that space or any type of thing like that? Or staff, any of the staff, do you have any information or update about that?
Well, I know Tasha had showed that space to a couple of people, of course, before she left, and they did not return to show any more interest in it. So it's not like we're not looking to rent that space out. But as far as anyone contacting us, I think Maria, you can speak on this. She may have had a.
So yeah, the inquiries have recently switched. They come to me directly. I received one actually, to be honest, yesterday from an outside vendor. That's the first I've received regarding the batch space. And to my knowledge, I mean, Tasha and I have always been in conversation about interest for that space, and we have not had applicants in a while for that space. So we did have one reach out yesterday, but that is a very new development. I mean, we as a staff have not had a ton of interest in that space. Thank you, Anna, for encouraging vendors to reach out to us. But I mean, it's not
here. Can I interject here? Are they supposed to go to you, Maria? I tell them to email Charles, but who do they aim that interest towards on the staff?
I mean, Tasha and our whole staff has always required them to fill out an online application for the market house. We require that of all applicants. I mean, they can definitely email Charles, and he will also send them to that application, so that's not an issue. But that is typically how we do.
Okay. Well, we're talking about all these efforts going towards a new market director, and I feel like we're maybe not making enough effort to go seek tenants for that space. I don't know why. I can name Intentional Illumination, who's not here right now because she had a death in the family. She would have gone so quickly into half of that space. We have a new pottery vendor outside who would go in there immediately into half of that space. Also, a weaver outside would go into less space than that entire space. Some point along the line, I believe Galena Garlic wanted to take the whole space. So I'm hearing of these current tenants at the market interested in that space, and it just feels like it's not going nowhere. And I know that the market, is just yearning for this. So I wonder if we could launch a campaign of some sort within a group of folks we know have some interest to fill that space. Because there's $5,000 a month to them going to the market if we can get folks in there, and budget seems to be on the menu here today too. So it seems like it would address a lot. And for whatever reason, it's just an unwillingness to split that space, and maybe there's a lot of backup to that choice, or maybe that needs to be considered. Because at its full size, it's just not getting leased.
Thank you, Anna. I'm actually aware of all the merchants that you mentioned being interested in the past. They did provide various reasons why they chose not to move forward. The ceramic business was the one that I did receive the application for yesterday for the batch space specifically. But that has been the only vendor currently interested that I know of. Galena Garlic and Intentional Illumination had chosen not to proceed for various reasons that I won't go into detail about, not necessarily financial. But yeah, I mean, the board can definitely entertain splitting that space. I think it would be difficult to make that decision if there was only one merchant interested. But that, yeah, I mean, I would welcome any feedback from the board on if they have, you know, any ideas on funding that they want us to request to build that out differently, or
I don't know that I would.
whatever their thoughts are.
I don't know that I was thinking the market should outlay for that. For that, I paid to have my space built. I mean, that's sort of what you agree to do to come to the market. But also, just considering that, because I also mentioned to the interested parties, put your team together, pick your other merchant, make yourself the package that would go in, not just half of it. You know, don't be just half of that. Find yourself the other merchant who would take on half the space, and together you present yourselves as somebody who can, or two entities who can fill what is now empty space. So I'm encouraging that, but I feel like as the market maybe could reach out and lay that out as an option for more public, because I feel like they feel like I got to take it all or I just can't. So that's stopping folks moving forward at this time. That's my understanding from what they're telling me. So I could be wrong.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for calling in today and for sharing that with us. I think at one time we briefly thought about if that was an option too, to split it. Not anything hard because we hadn't had anyone interested in it. So if they're interested, please, if you hear of anyone, please keep sending them to the staff so that they can discuss that further with them. And then that would give us an option and a time to think about how we could proceed with the space. But when they're, you know, interested and then they're not interested, I think that, you know, we have to just wait, you know, as far as waiting till we hear your interest pick back up as far as with the space. But I do appreciate you calling in to let us know that, and please continue to let the staff know. And Tasha and Charles, thank you. And you know, and I know as you hear of any interest in that, you always let us know as well. So I do thank you for that, all of you. Do we have anyone else on the line at this time, Charles, that wanted to have a comment?
No, we do not have anyone else on the line at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate Anna calling in today. And since we didn't have any fee waivers and we didn't decide on a payment plan, and that's going to possibly be on the agenda for next month, we can move forward since we do not have to vote on that with the executive director's report. And Charles, I will turn that over to you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Priscilla. As far as the executive director's report, a lot of some of what's normally in that report has been turned over to Maria, which she gave you in the financial overview and things like that. I do want to speak on just COVID conversation as restrictions are lifting around the city and in different counties. The market is still moving. We're still doing our mask mandate as far as requiring masks and still trying to practice social distancing. You know, keeping our facility one of the cleanest and safest places to visit in Nashville. So that's something that we're still really focused on right now. I know I am in the role of interim director, but it is also still my job to make sure that everything in the facility is running and working. So I'm also doing that as well. So the director's report will get bigger as, you know, these meetings go on. We'll have more to report, but I think the COVID right now is the biggest thing that we're keeping an eye on, just because so many more people are getting vaccinated and wanting to stop wearing masks and, you know, do things like that. So we're just keeping an eye on that and continuing that battle.
Thank you, Charles. Does anyone have any questions for him at this time?
This is Brenda. As a physician, I just want to say, I know that you'll follow the current guidance, and masking is still a thing. We need to do that. And vaccinations are no. And anyway, I know you'll keep up with the recommendations in that regard. Thanks.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Do you have any new business at this time?
Yes, the new business will be turned over to Miss Heather, and she's coming up.
Thank you, Heather.
Well, before we get to new business, I think we skipped one that's on the agenda as well, which is the Grow Local Kitchen settlement. I want to speak on that for half a second.
Charles?
Excuse me?
Yes, please. Sure.
Okay, I just want to speak on that a minute. So we did ended up coming to an agreement with the. Well, let me go back and talk about this. During the tornado last year, we had some damage to our roof. One of the things that was damaged was a weather vane on top of the Grow Local Kitchen. When the roofers went to repair that, they tried to straighten it back out because it got bent. They tried to straighten it back out with a blowtorch or whatever. The metal roof got hot, caught the installation on fire, and fire department was called out, and the Grow Local Kitchen, had water damage, which is why it's not open right now. So we've been going back and forth with the roofing company, just trying to figure out, and their insurance company trying to figure out, what's going on and come to an agreement. We did come to an agreement of $265,000 on that. So that's where we at with that, and I think Mr. Alex, is he still on the line? He can speak on that a little more to tell you what our next steps are with that.
Yes, Madam Chair, if it's permissible for me to go ahead and address the board.
Yes, please, Alex.
Okay, so what happened with this, I agree with everything Mr. Kaiser said. We were at a point where we were in negotiations with Cincinnati Insurance, and Tasha was back and forth with them, and we couldn't really come to an agreement on our own. So the parties agreed to go to a formal mediation, which is not uncommon and usually very helpful. And in this case, it really was, because we were able to propose some numbers to the insurance company. They were able to counter with that. And after some back and forth, we both walked out without a resolution, but then one came the following week. And I'll always say, from a litigator standpoint, any mediation resolution where both of you walk away hurting is usually a good thing. That means that you both gave up a little bit to get what you needed. And ultimately, the way this will work is we'll be asking for board approval of the settlement amount, and then this will go to Metro Council for their approval by resolution, just so we have that clean and there's no there's always a possibility later on if for some reason bids get higher and you end up being in a place where you need to request something supplementary from the council for that, then council will be able to say at least, okay, well, we looked at the settlement the first time it came through. So this is just kind of a belt and suspenders approach to making sure that everything is approved by the correct entities, so we're ready down the road.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And do we have to have that on our agenda to vote on that today, or is that something we need to wait for next month to do that?
It's on the amended agenda. There was an original agenda put out, and then it was amended so that this item was on there so you could vote on it today.
Okay, thank you. I have the original one. Okay, great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions before we vote on that?
Can I ask a brief question? So when do we get that money, and is that included in our budget, or does that make us better off than we?
This is Alex Dickerson. I can answer the first part of that. We would get the money via check from Cincinnati as soon as council passes it. We have it, if the board approves it today, we anticipate that it'll be sent by resolution for the May 18th council meeting. So I anticipate you would have a check in hand probably by the end of May.
Speak on the second half of that, Brenda, it's Maria. So that fund, those funds, once they are deposited, they will not go into our regular operating budget. There will be a fund created for the build back of that project. So those funds will automatically go into that fund, a separate fund, so that it doesn't close at the end of the fiscal year or anything like that. It'll be like one of those funds that will be open for, you know, longer than a year, so that we can draw directly from those dollars to build back the kitchen. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Okay, may I get a motion for the settlement amount of $265,000 for the Grow Local Kitchen?
This is Angela. I make a motion.
Brenda here,
Okay, all in favor of the amount of $265,000? Aye, Priscilla Norman.
I, Brenda Baca.
I, Angela Crane Jones.
And Scott, could you repeat that again, please? I think you and Brenda were saying it at the same time.
Aye. Scott, aye, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you, Charles. And we can move forward with the new business with Heather.
Yes. Okay, right before Heather goes on, we just had another call in to make a comment, and I think it's Tammy from Delta 61.
Okay, is she on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Tammy, if you can hear me, just state your name and then just state the business that you're with, please.
Okay, sure. This is Tammy Whitehouse. I'm with Delta 61. We have been a part of Nashville Farmers Market since 2011 and received our lease for the space that we're currently occupying in 2017. So we've been part of all of the wonderful changes that have occurred in the market, and thoroughly enjoy our time there, and definitely very gracious that the board granted us our lease after, if any of you are around, after many presentations. I still, and I'm going to probably be on the same bandwagon for a little bit in asking the board to reconsider the presence of food trucks outside in the farm sheds. Obviously, during this time with COVID, any revenue, anything that has an impact on our revenues as food merchants inside can be detrimental. And I think that and I speak for several of the food vendors, and I would welcome the board to discuss any of this with any of the food vendors that are inside and some of the non-food vendors. I've had several discussions with many of the vendors inside. There are a couple of things that concern me regarding the food trucks. Most of the vendors inside, particularly the food vendors, through COVID have gone through 2 rent increases in the midst of the pandemic. Ours was, the first one was right after it started, and then we just incurred our second increase, which I am aware is part of the lease. However, I also am aware that it could be foregone, based on either the board or the executive director's decision. The food trucks, as published, have been paying the same rent since 2017, possibly 2016. So I feel like there's if they are going to be allowed, the inequity in the rent increase that we've endured during the pandemic, and the fact that those vendors are still paying rent, the same amount of rent for the last 5 years, is disturbing and upsetting. And I know that Charles has addressed with one particular food vendor the use of styrofoam, which as you all know, styrofoam is not permitted in the market. This particular vendor continues to use styrofoam, which we wouldn't use styrofoam anyways, but the fact that, you know, they can pay 2 cents a container where we're paying 26 cents per container to comply, and they're supposed to be in compliance as well. That's also kind of a thorn in my side. And then, you know, I understand that they were initially allowed in as part of the residents of the Grow Local Kitchen program. And when we were in that program, we were the first graduates, if you will, from the Grow Local Kitchen. And at that particular time, you graduated into a business, whether it be a food truck or a brick and mortar somewhere else, or you were selected as a permanent vendor or awarded a lease into the market. There was one particular vendor out there that they were in line for the next spot that became available and decided to forego the spot when it became available to become a food truck. But now this particular vendor lists Farmers Market as, if you go to their Facebook page and all of their information, 900 Rosa L. Park is their address that they operate from. That's kind of a, you know, I feel like you're getting the benefit of being a part of the market and you're listing your address, but you really are accepting none of the risk as the permanent vendors that are in that pay thousands of dollars each month to be in that space. I feel like there's a bit of a conflict of interest, if you will, in food trucks being allowed and paying $75 a day, and they can drive in and drive out whenever they want, where, you know, we as permanent vendors accept that risk and sign the lease to pay those thousands of dollars a month, and they're capitalizing only on the busiest days. And I realize I guess they had a bit of a, you know, during the pandemic, you know, they were affected as well, but they know where to go during the weekdays to make money. They're not there during the weekdays during the slowest times. They're there during the busiest times. And now there's a area set up outside for people picnic tables, and it just, as a food vendor and the amount of rent that we pay each month, I would just really like the board to reconsider either the presence of or allowing those food trucks in, and or if they're going to be allowed, at least consider a rent increase so that it's more equitable for the food trucks that are temporary and can come and go, versus us that are permanent. And we are where we are. We have to gather revenue from the brick and mortar that we have invested on the inside. And as Anna said, to my knowledge, everybody inside the market has paid to improve their space and make it what it needed to be in the market. So again, I would ask that the board kind of look at that again. I had another thought, but it escapes me, and I will be happy to field any questions or make any additional comments. I've kind of been beating this drum throughout the pandemic. Maybe special events or something like that, where there are a lot more people. But right now, we're all trying to recover. I work a job outside of Farmers Market and outside of my business, and have been doing that since April of last year to do what I needed to do to keep our business afloat and keep my bills paid. So I don't know. That's kind of where I am, and a lot of the other food vendors inside the market with regards to.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions at this time? For her? Okay.
and I remembered my other thought in regard to, Caracasville, Delicious Colombians, and Peruvians have all been part of the Grow Local Kitchen. But in the last 411, the grilled cheese is going to be outside as a food truck, which they have 3 brick and mortar locations and a food truck. So I'm trying to figure out how that fits into the scheme of things in terms of they were resident, the other trucks that were given as they were residents of the Grow Local Kitchen as to why they were out there. So that was kind of the icing on the cake for me when I saw the grilled cheesery was going to be outside as well. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you so much, Tammy, for calling in today and for sharing that with us. Thank you. Does any of the staff have anything to add to that, or that you would like to say at this time regarding that?
I mean, overall, I think we've discussed it several times, and I do feel like the board knows our position on food trucks.
Yes.
It definitely would be a financial decision as well to eliminate food trucks. So I'm happy to provide any information to help the board make a decision on that. And if we do need to discuss our rental rates or anything of that matter, I mean, I'm happy to provide any information that the board is looking for so that they can make an educated decision on the food truck.
Can you tell us what the rental rate is for a food truck?
Yeah, it's currently $75 a day. It was $50 a day in 2019. So we did do an increase. I mean, maybe that, I mean, it would not be very well known to the inside merchants what their rental rates are. But yes, it is $75 a day year round now at this point. Which, I mean, I would say the majority, or at least our 2 main food trucks that have been with us for a very long time, I mean, they are 3-day-a-week food trucks. They're Friday through Sunday. And then they, I mean, they're there all month. So, I mean, they are consistent with payments. That's our current rate.
Is there consideration given to a conflict of what's inside versus outside?
Yes, I mean, for the most part, we have that consideration with any new vendors we bring in. We do consider what's already offered. If the cuisine, is different, or if we believe it attracts different customers. I mean, everyone's gonna have a different opinion on whether they believe that a different cuisine takes their customer base. So I mean, both of the trucks outside are primarily, I mean, one's Peruvian and one is Venezuelan, so.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions at this time? Again, Linda, thank you so much for calling in and for voicing your concerns. Thank you so much. We will move on to Heather at this time with the new business.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Heather. I just wanted to mention a couple of quick things that we're working on right now. While we're looking to fill our marketing coordinator position, which we're currently interviewing for, we're working directly with a few media and marketing professionals to help promote the market as a whole and also some upcoming events. The second week of May, we plan to have a week-long Strawberry Jubilee promotion featuring vendor products and specials, as well as a digital recipe contest. On May 21st, we'll be bringing back Night Market, which is really exciting. We didn't have it at all last year, so it'll be great to have it back. There will be music inside and outside, extended restaurant hours, and several vendors set up in Farm Shed 2. We're working closely with Amanda of Squeaky Wheel PR to help promote these events with local media, as well as offering media training to staff and the board. We're also working with Paul of Results Media to update our commercial, which ran last fall. The new commercial will be shot May 7th on site. He's then going to shop the ad to TV and digital outlets to help boost the upcoming peak season. Are there any questions?
Is there any plan to have live music on an ongoing basis?
So we do currently have live music every weekend in the farm sheds. We also have it every Friday night as a part of Friday Night Live. We've partnered with the Picnic Tap directly, and they provide the music for us. So they do Friday night music, they do Saturday from 9 to 2 in the farm sheds, and they also do Sunday music. So.
Okay.
Natchez also provides music Saturday, Sunday inside.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
Thank you for those updates, Heather.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Alex, at this time, we have it on the agenda for the legal updates for boards and commissions. Can you go ahead and give that to us as well?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start that. And just so everybody else knows, this is required training for board and commission members. So if members of the public want to sign off now, you're welcome to. It's still part of the open meeting, but this is just kind of some required training that happens. And I'll also ask Sharda if you could pass me the ball so I can use it for a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. Okay, so just for the board members' knowledge, this came about, the idea for this presentation came about as a result of Mayor Cooper's Blue Ribbon Commission on Open Government that he put together when he took office. The idea being we want to try to foster openness and accountability in all of our government aspects. One of the recommendations of that group was that board and commission members be trained annually on ethics. Which, obviously the Department of Law would be the ones to implement this, and we put it together. I think it's a great idea. We always have turnover in these positions just because new board and commission members come on, some drop off, and ethics rules change and open meetings rules change and the Public Records Act. So we decided to combine all three of those aspects, ethics, public records, and open meetings, into one presentation just to give those who are experienced a refresher and those who are new to it an introduction to it, just so we understand what everything is. So the goals of the presentation are as follows. First, understand that you cannot accept benefits related to your role on board. And also, let me say this: if there are any questions during the process of this presentation, just interrupt, and I'm happy to answer them. Two, understand when you may be biased or have a conflict and should recuse yourself. 3, remember to disclose knowledge you have received about an agenda item from outside the meeting. 4, remember to articulate the specific reasons and bases for your decision. 5, understand that the Open Meetings Act prohibits deliberation outside board meetings, and the Public Records Act makes almost all of your emails open to the public. And 6, understand best practices for making informed decisions. First, understand that you cannot accept benefits related to your role on the board. That's common sense, obviously, for most of us when you think in terms of, a type of financial benefit. We obviously, as board members, you couldn't accept cash for being a board member, but sometimes there's more subtle benefits that you might accrue. And the goal of Metro Code Chapter 2.222 is just to always put you in a position where you pause if you believe you're getting some benefit as a board member that you would not be entitled to as a regular member of the public. Anytime that happens, be it a meal, be it some type of financial incentive, be it anything that you're access to something, you should always ask yourself, okay, if I'm getting this because I'm a board member, is that ethically appropriate? And that's where Metro Code Section 2.222 comes in. So I would just encourage you to use that as a resource. I'll go over a few. Some benefits that you cannot accept under any circumstances are as follows. Any benefit that might reasonably tend to influence you to act improperly in the discharge of your duties. So, this kind of covers you might think to yourself, okay, I'm a board member, but if you were to give me a flat screen TV, I know that I personally would not be tempted to do that. That this covers those too. Even if it reasonably would tend to influence someone, then it is an improper benefit to accept. So just because it wouldn't affect you doesn't mean that it's proper for you to accept it. Also, use of Metro property, services, or funds for personal reasons. Usually you're not going to have access to funds, but you may end up with some reason while you're out and about in the farmer's market, you can't use the property of the farmer's market or services that the farmer's market provides for something that would benefit you personally, just because you're a board member. Use of non-public Metro information for personal gain or for the gain of any family member or other employer. A lot of times, there's a lot of what we have is subject to public records and is open, and the public can have access to it. You can, of course, have access to that information too, to use it however you want. But if there's some type of information that you have access to because you are a board member, that the public does not have access to that information, that would be improper for you to use that in any way for financial gain. Also, to secure unwanted privileges or exemptions for yourselves, relatives, or others. I think that's important. You want to make sure that that you're not using it for yourself, but you also aren't using it for relatives or anyone else. Accepting employment which may impair your judgment. Obviously, if one of the board members started working for a key vendor, it would be improper. That may prevent you from being able to neutrally vote on things that affect that. So that would be an improper position for you to accept employment with someone very close to the farmer's market. Accepting any benefit which the employee should reasonably believe was intended to influence any action taken in your official capacity. So regardless of the value of it, if someone is using it in a way which you reasonably believe was intended for you to make a decision as a board member, that's improper for you to accept for any value. Limited exceptions, so you can accept some benefits. These are going to be small awards of trifling value for public service, as long as they're publicly recognized. Gifts unrelated to your position as an employee. If you've accepted a fruitcake every Christmas from somebody who now that you're a board member happens to be a farmer's market vendor, you can still accept that fruitcake because it doesn't have anything to do with your position as an employee. It's just that's a pre-existing issue. Meals, beverages, food, promotional items, or hand-produced items of a value up to $25 from a single source in any calendar year. So this often will protect. I know around Christmas time last year, like there were some plants that were given to board members that were of small value, and I think some summer sausages. That's intended to cover that. As long as it's less than $25 from any one source in a single calendar year, that's not the kind of thing that's an ethical problem for you to accept. It also would permit meals. Sometimes boards and commissions will have some type of catered event, certainly around the holidays, that's possible. And as long as the value of the meal, if you're going to get steaks at Cane Prime, that's probably going to be above $25 and you'd need to pay the overage. But as long as it's under $25 per person from a single source, you're okay. And the last one is free or discounted admissions, tickets, or access to events, as long as, again, single source aggregate value of up to $100 in a calendar year. So you would pay the overage if you went to an event where it was more than that. Or the tickets of a face value in excess of $100 if the event is generally recognized as an annual fundraiser benefit sponsored by a nonprofit. So this permits those of you who might attend some annual nonprofit event that's more than $100. This allows you to continue to go to those since it's a fundraising for a nonprofit. How this is done in practice is if there is a question of ethical violation, there's a Metro Board of Ethical Conduct that's been set up. Much like your board or commission, they abide by the same rules. Anyone can make a complaint related to that. Then you can also request advisory opinions of the board regarding compliance. Complaints are made from boards or commissions. The Department of Law investigates and determines whether or not, if true, it would be a violation. Board decides whether they want to have a hearing. If a hearing's held, it's very similar to what you would imagine. Parties are given an opportunity to present evidence and the board would render a decision. Penalties can be pretty strict for this. They can recommend to council that you be censured for your behavior, that a person resign their position. If there is a criminal issue, it can be referred to the DA. If it's a civil violation, it's referred to the Director of Law to determine if prosecution is necessary for restitution. So the second goal, understand when you may be biased or have a conflict and should recuse yourself. So you have a duty of independence as a board member. You can't vote in your self-interest, can't vote in family's interest, you can't vote on bias in favor or against people you know. Sometimes people think that it's only in favor. You can't vote against someone just because you don't like them. You have to use the law and the evidence in front of you. And you can't based on the interest of the director or contractors with whom your board interacts. Sometimes we have boards and commissions have very close relationships with, you all have close relationships with food vendors or with vendors using your space, and you have close relationships with the staff. Ultimately, even though those are important factors and you need to use the knowledge you have with those relationships to inform your decisions, you have a duty to be independent and to act in the benefit of Metro, not necessarily those individuals who you have a close relationship with. That duty of independence is really important. Again, you have to act impartially and based on the law and evidence presented to you. A little Q&A here. If I have a potential conflict, should I recuse myself? Yes, if you will have some type of personal financial interest. You or a family member could gain or lose money based on your vote. You must recuse for that kind of issue. If you are biased or prejudiced for or against a party, such as an individual or member of a group about what you're voting on, if you believe you cannot be objective because you have a certain relationship, then you need to abstain and to recuse yourself. Now, of course, if you believe that, hey, I have a relationship with this person, but I believe I can vote neutrally and I can be impartial, then you can state that for the record and just identify the potential conflict and state that you still intend to vote. Or if you cannot fairly or impartially weigh the evidence because you have prejudged fact issues. You may you may be in a position where you know too much about the facts, and the evidence presented in a hearing would be, that it would be insufficient for you to change your mind. In that case, it would be appropriate for you to recuse yourself. No, you do not have to recuse yourself if you don't stand to gain or lose money fairly directly from the decision, and you can be objective and don't believe that it will create an appearance of impropriety for you to vote. Again, in that case, it's appropriate if you see a potential conflict that you can vote through to state that for the record. That's important because you don't want it to come out later on that you had a potential conflict but didn't disclose it. Then it looks like you're hiding something even though you might not necessarily have been hiding it. And also, this happens a ton, and I want to encourage you to use this resource. If you have a question about a potential conflict in any way, reach out to the staff and just say, hey, listen, here's one thing I'm concerned about. Charles knows how to reach out to me. Oftentimes, he'll just direct you directly to me. While I do not represent any board member in their individual capacity, I'm more than happy to share with you my thoughts and opinions about whether this is the kind of conflict that warrants recusal. You can also, of course, seek your own independent legal advice if you have questions about that. Third goal of training here, remember to disclose knowledge you have received about an agenda item from outside the meeting. So that's important because the public sees what it is, the documents you've received, the testimony that's heard during the board meeting, and the deliberations. But if you're voting on something and a factor in your decision is something that you've experienced personally with the applicant or with the decision maker, that's something you need to state on the record, just so it's clear that, hey, listen, I've actually been working with this vendor and here's the issue, or, I've actually observed this and during the time I've been in the farmer's market and here's what I've seen. It's important for that to be on the record so that when a court reviews this decision, which always may happen, that they understand what was being factored into the decision and it doesn't look like your decision is arbitrary. Knowledge can also include attempts to lobby you outside the meeting. You know, if something like that happens, you need to disclose that as well, just so it's on the record. And remember, when you all were put in these positions as board members and asked to serve, it's done in large part because of your expertise in the area. So no one's expecting you to leave your knowledge base at the door and pretend to vote on things as someone who doesn't know anything about them. We want you to use your knowledge, your expertise. So if you have some particular aptitude in an area where you're voting on, and something about your training has led you to a decision, state that for the record. You know, hey, listen, I've owned a kitchen, you know, I've owned a restaurant for 20 years, and in my experience, blah, 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 here's why I want to vote this way. That's appropriate. Let's see here. Remember to articulate the specific reasons and basis for your decision. Acceptable reasons to vote would be the relevant guideline or laws, obviously, and that's it. That's my job and the job of the staff to point out to you when you make a vote when you're asked to vote for something, what the restrictions are and why it is you're supposed to vote the way you vote. Facts presented at the hearing and past experience with similar issues. It's always relevant what the board's done before, and studies by experts or specific observations made by the public. So if you get public hearing on something and you get public comments and you want to vote because, in part because of what the public said, that's a relevant criteria for your vote. Unacceptable reasons would be sympathy for the applicant or for people opposed to the approval. A lot of times you are asked to make hard decisions in your job, and the fact that a particular vendor, a particular customer may have some type of sympathy, if that's not part of the criteria for your vote, then it shouldn't be part of it. Now, of course, that will always factor into any decision you consider because of how people present it. But you want to do your best to remove the sympathy aspect and vote explicitly on the laws and the evidence in front of you. And also opposition that is not based on relevant guidelines or laws. Sometimes people oppose something or are for something for reasons that are not within why it is you're supposed to make a vote. And that's fine. They can have their own opinions about that, but you have to vote based on the guidelines and the evidence. Number 5, understand that the Open Meetings Act prohibits deliberation outside board meetings, and Public Records Act makes almost all of your emails open to the public. So as for the Public Records Act, it's something to remember that any document that's created is part of Metro, and that's staff members, and that's also communications. If the staff creates a chart as part of their financial analysis, that is subject to being turned over to someone who requests it as part of a Public Records Act disclosure. If there's an email back and forth about some board business, that is subject to disclosure. Now, if one of you wants to share an excellent rhubarb pie recipe with a fellow board member, that is not subject to disclosure. But that doesn't mean that your email can't still be searched for it. And, you know, a lot of questions we get about, well, you know, if it's my personal email, you can't search that, right? Well, no, if you're conducting board business on your personal email, then it may be subject to search for in response to to a public records request. So always encourage people to remember not to, if you don't want it publicized and handed over to someone, don't put it into an email sent to related to your board position. Violations of the Open Meetings Act make decisions based on those deliberations void. So you'll hear a lot of the time, the most frustrating aspect of being a board member, I am sure, is the fact that you can only really speak to your fellow board members about board business during the hour or hour and a half you have to address them each month. And I know that's the case, and I know it's very frustrating, but the fact is that's what the law says, and so we all have to abide by it. A meeting for purposes of Open Meetings Act is really simple. Any two of you get together and talk about something, either make a decision or deliberate toward a decision, and that second part's key. You don't have to formally agree, hey, listen, you're going to vote this and I'm going to vote this and it'll be okay, in order for it to be a violation. If you even talk about something, the court has interpreted that to be that could possibly be considered deliberation. And so for an open meeting, for a real meeting, you have to have it publicly noticed, you have to have an agenda, all the stuff we do for these public meetings that we have. If you two get together and have a conversation on your own, that's obviously not a public meeting and it's a violation of TOMA. Notice is important. That's why you heard me talk today about the fact that we couldn't vote about something that wasn't on the agenda. A lot of times you will be tempted as board members to, if there's a public comment period or if something's raised by the staff, to want to vote because you want to resolve the issue quickly. But remember, if you're a member of the public and you had something to say about an issue, you would be, and something important was decided that wasn't on the agenda, that would be unfair to the public because they may have wanted to say something about it, which is why we always insist that it be added to next month's agenda and then everything can be properly voted on. Adequate public notice is not a clear answer. Courts have basically said it depends on the facts and circumstances. We have lost cases before where we had a 48-hour notice for something, and courts have found less time than that to be sufficient. So it just depends on the gravity of the vote and what was the facts and circumstances for each one. Non-meetings would be an on-site inspection. If you all were called out to look at some space inside the farmer's market, to look at that, and you weren't deliberating or voting on it, you're just observing it, that's fine, that's not a violation. Chance meeting, if you both happen to show up to the grocery store and you see each other, you don't have to run screaming away just because you're in the same physical space. You can talk about anything under the sun, in fact, just don't talk about board business. And attorney-client meetings, those are rare, but occasionally we'll have them if there is litigation or the threat of pending litigation. That's a decision made by the Department of Law as to whether that qualifies. We rarely do it. You probably, in your board tenure, will not experience more than one or two, hopefully. And let's see here. Executive electronic meetings, I'm going to skip through this. You guys have seen it, and it's about to expire, frankly, at the end of this month, I think. So you'll be back to in-person meetings in May, one way or the other. But basically, you have to have the vote we had at the beginning. You have roll call. Meetings are live streamed. Public have access to them. Recording must be made within 2 days. You're strongly urged to include the agenda in the notice. Meeting participants must identify themselves. Public comment must be similar to what in-person was. And you all have done that throughout the process. So best practices for staff. We always recommend providing a detailed agenda for each meeting. The more items that are on there, the more the public is noticed and the board can vote. You also want to have as many relevant documents to the vote submitted to the board early in the process so they can review them and ask questions of the staff to get clarifying comments made. Providing a staff report is helpful, and you all do that. If there's an item that you're recommending some course of action, we recommend the staff spell that out explicitly. Maybe put it in a PowerPoint or put it in some type of verbiage that the board can vote up or down on or make some amendments to. Just makes it clearer for the record what you sought. And start meetings with declaration by any board members of conflicts or recusals. If you're going to have to recuse yourself, it's best to know early because that particular board member should not be participating in either deliberation or the vote. Best practices for board members, know your departments. I think it's important that each board and commission member spend some time having conversations one-on-one with the executive director, with the finance person, with the operations person, just so you can know everything there is to know about it. That just is going to more inform your vote. Review the documents that are given to you beforehand. If there's a document you think will inform your vote for something in the coming month, ask for it and ask for it to be sent out to all board members. That's appropriate. Note any conflicts that should be disclosed or warrant recusal. Early in the process is better than realizing halfway through a deliberation that you shouldn't be voting on something. And consider adopting metrics for your board to measure whether you're acting timely or in accordance with your board's duties. You can always be better, always be more efficient, and always be thinking about how you can be the best board you are. That's the presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Alex, so much for the review today and the training. Does anyone have any questions or have anything they need to add? Okay, if not, thank everyone for joining today. I want to thank the two that were on the call for their comments today. That always gives us information to think about. Again, thank the staff. Thank you for your hard work. We do appreciate it. And if there's nothing else at this time, the meeting is adjourned. Have a great day.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.